Hi, my name is Nicole. Welcome to my channel, Travel to Money. In this video, we're going to discuss whether or not the 3-year cruise by Life at Sea Cruises is a scam, and at the very least, give you some info if you are considering making the voyage that takes off this November. There seem to be some red flags, so I'll tell you what I think, and I'd love to know what you think too. If you are new here, I have created this channel to help you learn about how to travel, adventure, and have fun on the road to financial independence. I have traveled the world, I own a couple of houses in Spain, and I'm on a creative journey to financial independence. I believe the road to financial freedom can and should be fun. I hope you'll subscribe and join me on this journey, no matter where you are starting from. Okay, so back in March of this year, I saw an article about a new 3-year cruise, specifically designed for digital nomads. I nerded out, learned a whole lot about it, and shared this video right here, which slowly over time has become one of my most watched videos. Now, I am not affiliated with Life at Sea Cruises at all. I kind of wish I had been. I would have loved to have had a commission from referrals, but I don't think they were on the hunt for leads. Once they announced this cruise, they were bombarded with phone calls and people ready to commit. Well, since then, things have gone a little south, and that's what we're going to talk about today. About a month ago, someone commented on my last cruise video saying, "So many red flags. I just watched the webinar for Life at Sea, and I'm completely convinced that this is Fyre 2.0. Buyer beware." If you aren't familiar or don't remember, back in 2017, Fyre Fest was a fraudulent music festival where people were promised things like luxury villas, and instead there were tents and mattresses that got soaked in a rainstorm just hours before guests were supposed to arrive. There were money scams in order to pay back short-term loans, wire fraud to defraud investors, and there was also fraud to defraud a vendor. The whole thing was a mess. The main guy, Billy McFarland, was sentenced to 6 years in prison. There are a whole lot of details that you can read about if you want to Google it, but basically the whole event was a scam. Funny enough, in May of 2023, McFarland announced that Fyre 1.5 is coming. Why in the world anyone would think that is a good idea is beyond me. But you know what? Sometimes people get in over their heads. A lot of the worst things people do start with good intentions, and then they make one small compromise after another until they've spun a web so big that they can't get out of it. It seems to me like McFarland was one of those people. He probably does really want to pull off an awesome festival. Now, if I'm him, I think maybe I'd just get out of jail and go into a different industry, but maybe he'll pull it off the second time after the lessons he's learned. Not with my money. Anyway, I hadn't heard anything similar to this one comment on my video, but I wanted to know why this viewer thought that about Life at Sea Cruises, so I asked. That same person didn't respond, but someone else did just about a week ago, saying, "Life at Sea is a subsidiary of Murray Cruises, the owner of MV Gemini, which is the ship that the first 3-year voyage was supposed to sail on. No issues with that. Lots of companies form subsidiaries to keep the liabilities limited. The big issue is, at the end of May, the entire management group quit due to a disagreement with Murray over the Gemini. Life at Seas had concerns that the Gemini would be unable to complete the 3-year voyage. Murray, the parent company, blew them off, despite engineering reports stating the Gemini has serious mechanical issues. So the team at Life at Seas quit. I'm sorry, I like the idea, but this isn't going to end well for the people giving Life at Seas their hard-earned money." Thank you, Dave, for your comment. That helped me to understand more about the recent situation, and I started digging a little bit. So, as it turns out, Murray, the parent company, announced that the cruise is not canceled and that they are moving forward. However, although we don't know a lot of the specific details, they have changed ships, which to me sends off all kinds of red flags, because initially they were defending that the Gemini was seaworthy. And forget about that for a minute, just the operational and logistical nightmare that it must be to change a vessel for something as big as a 3-year cruise. I watched a couple of the webinars that the executive team has live streamed since the resignation of the staff who had initially been putting together the sales and operations. I want to get into my thoughts on the mess of information they provided, but I also want to preface it with a little bit of my background. I worked in water safety and operations management for theme parks for 10 years. It was my first career. I worked in Texas, Florida, and Virginia, and I first moved to Florida to be part of the opening team for Discovery Cove. Just like Life at Sea Cruises, Discovery Cove was owned by the parent company at the time, Bush Entertainment Corporation, which was owned by Anheuser-Busch and operated parks like SeaWorld and Busch Gardens. Now, in my opinion, doing something for the first time comes with a whole lot of logistical nightmares. After being part of the opening team at that park, when I left, I vowed that I would never do that again, because so much of what happens is a knee-jerk response. Rather than being proactive, the job in the beginning feels very reactive. For example, I worked in water safety, and at Discovery Cove, when we opened, they hadn't planned for umbrellas for the lifeguards. They hadn't planned for water bottles. They wanted all of the rocks to look real, so not all of the lifeguard positions were level. All of these things contributed to some unhappy lifeguards, but none of them are things that can be fixed with the snap of a finger. And that was just a couple of examples from my little department. Every department was having to deal with issues, and that's just the nature of opening something new for the first time. I don't personally think that Life at Sea Cruises is trying to scam people, but I do think they are dealing with operational and logistical problems that could end up being more than they can handle. Or it could just mean that the first time they operate, it has a lot of bumps in the road. Either way, at this point, it is very clear that the process is not seamless. So I watched the most recent webinar video that they published, as well as the first one they have available on their website, which left me looking like this. It's like a train crashing in slow motion and you can't look away. These are some of the red or yellow flags that came to mind as I watched these webinars and as I browsed through the website for the first time in a few months. Number one, when they were planning to sail with Gemini, they had these beautiful virtually staged videos of the ship and they looked stunning. Now, when you go on the site, it just has a few pictures of the new ship and it just looks like an old cruise ship to me. It's just not the same stunning visuals that they had generated previously. Number two, one of the cool selling points in the initial presentation was that they were going to have pods delivered to your house to collect your things and have them sent to the ship. It seemed like such a high-level offering. Now they're like, we're just asking everyone to bring suitcases and we will cover up to $500 of the cost to either ship them or for you to bring extra suitcases on the plane. And generally when you go on a cruise, you bring suitcases, but it just went from very high level to scrambling for a solution. There were a lot of comments like, we're going to figure out X, Y, and Z, because there currently isn't a plan or solution. One of the other things they were discussing was port changes due to certain issues or visas that were needed. So this perfect itinerary is now changing. And I don't think there is anything too concerning about making itinerary changes as needed. But my biggest question is, why didn't they know about these visa and port restrictions when the initial itinerary was developed? At the same time, I would imagine that when you're dealing with ports in hundreds of countries, that it can be really complicated. It just seems like that could have been better researched, or maybe they were trying to make this cruise happen too quickly. Now, the latest webinar was like a question and answer session, and it just seemed like so many people were being handled on a case-by-case basis, which to me seems like another logistical nightmare. I think the current executive team is really trying to be relational and get to know each of the passengers, which is cool, and I get why that matters. But in a webinar setting to an onlooker, it just comes off as unorganized. One of the questions that came in was about vaccines, because some vaccines are needed just a day or so before arriving at a location. The ship was going to be providing those on board, but the response from the woman running the call was basically, we will have vaccines available, but we need to know who needs what vaccines. And at the time of that recording, it didn't appear that they had a system in place to collect that information. Another item that would be handled on a case-by-case basis is where your guests can join you on the ship. They said if you had guests planning to join you, to reach out to them for details, and it would be handled on a case-by-case basis. That just seems like a lot of things to handle for each individual passenger. Another red flag was the hiccup they apparently had with processing deposits via Square. I'm not sure of the details, but apparently Square inadvertently refunded a lot of the $5,000 deposits made by customers. So they had 200 reservations, but now only have 80 of the deposits. I'm not sure if they did something wrong or if Square did, but I'm just glad I'm not the finance or salesperson handling those situations. Whew. They seem to be offering full refunds for anyone who has decided not to cruise, though they are trying to build trust and retain their customers. Now, would I book this cruise at this point? No, I wouldn't. But at the same time, I really don't think they're trying to scam anyone. I think they are trying to make this happen to the best of their ability. However, what they have to deal with may prove to be beyond their ability and experience. I really hope it goes off well for both the people sailing and for the crew. I would love to be on one of these cruises one day, but just after they've done it successfully a couple of times. With my background in communications and operations, I really think they should hire me to come fix a lot of this with them. But then again, I swore I'd never be part of an opening operation again. Trust me when I say there will be some long days ahead for them. I would love to know what you think. Do you think it's just a scam? Do you think they're in over their heads? Or do you think they'll pull it off? Let me know below. No matter what you think, I'm glad you're here, and I hope you'll stick around by subscribing to join me every day where travel and adventure build financial freedom. I can't wait to see where your dreams will take you.